guys were lucky enough to get to see some students present yesterday, so you are in for a treat again today. Before we get started, just some quick thank yous to the tech crew, to your parents if they are members of the Booster Club that help support Writers Week, to all of you for being a wonderful audience, and to all of our presenters for bravely sharing their writing with us today. So thank you to all of those people. We are going to go ahead and get started with our first presenter today, Morgan Miller.
Hi guys, I'm Morgan. Shout out to my third period English class, Miss O'Donnell. Thank you. So I'd like to start this off by saying we all make mistakes. Like one time I tried to organize all of our shoes in the garage and my mom ended up tripping over them and breaking her foot. Classic, right? We've all done that. As it's my senior year, I thought I should get one large mistake off my chest before I leave. This story has haunted me in my dreams, and every time I eat fish, I like to have a moment of silence and respect for the creature on my plate. And I'm a pescatarian, so that is often. Now, this started on a sunny day, not just sunny, a beautiful day. I think it might have been one of the 2 days of spring Chicago gets. My friends and I, let's call her Becky, decided to go to the pond near her house. Now, I'm not one for catching frogs or fish, but that day I decided to bring a little net with me just in case I got lucky. I watched the water in the pond for what seemed like hours until finally a little fishy came swimming right into my net. It was the color of a penny. A dirty penny that you find on the street, but still a penny. And therefore, with my creative senses, I named the fish Penny. Now, with the limited fish knowledge I had as a fourth grader, I took Penny home in a Ziploc bag filled with water. When I got home, I carefully placed Penny into a bigger bowl so she could have all the space she needed to swim, but not a clear bowl like normal. No. I used a purple soup bowl. How did I know she was a she, you ask? I didn't. But when I looked into her eyes, she communicated with me almost telepathically, as if she were saying, yo, I'm a girl, you're a girl. Why don't you steal me from my home pond and bike me home in a plastic baggie? Seems like a fun idea. If she could talk, that's exactly what she would have said. Now, I spent the whole day just staring at Penny. It was so cool watching her color shine when the light hit it at a perfect angle, and animals had always fascinated me, so it made sense that I grew to love this fish within 2 hours. I maybe grew to love this fish a little too much. Now, before I tell you what I did, I just want to say I am not a murderer. I love animals, and according to a BuzzFeed quiz I took a week ago, I am only 20% likely to be a serial killer. As I looked at Penny, my dog ran by. And as always, I gave him a little pet before he went on his way. And then it hit me. If I can pet my dog and cats, why can't I pet my fish? So, very carefully, I scooped Penny into my hands and I started to pet her. Yeah, you heard that right. I literally started to pet my fish. You're probably thinking, wow, this girl is psycho. Last year she talks about some unidentified hair crisis, and this year she talks about a fish she pet. Well, it's actually worse than that. You see, Penny looked so cute in my hand, but as most fish would, she began to squirm. Her first mistake was swimming into my net, but her fatal mistake was squirming. Because as I tightened my grip on the fish, I guess I tightened slightly too much. With a quick pop, I realized I had squeezed my fish to death. Penny's eyes were inverted and she laid still in my hand. A normal person would have started crying or run to their parents with the terrible news, but not this fourth grader. No. I calmly put Penny back into her bowl where she laid sideways. And to make matters worse, I gave her a little push, convinced she was just acting. She was not acting. I don't know why I really thought that in the first place. In fact, a couple hours later, when my mom asked, "Why is there a dead fish in this soup bowl?" I just watched her pour into the toilet and flush her away. Are you wondering what the moral of this story is? There really isn't one. I mean, I guess don't squeeze your pet fish until its eyes pop inward. I'm now the proud owner of a fish tank, and I can assure you guys that only 2 fish and 1 frog have died thus far. Although I did get this tank at the beginning of the school year. And as I'm reading this, I'm starting to realize I probably should not have animals anymore. Oh, thanks, guys. Next up, we have the wonderful Caroline Von Roon.
Hey guys, shout out to my mom who's sick but still came. Love you, Mom. As a young child, I was a bit of a daredevil, to say the least. Whether it was attempting a backflip off of a swing or jumping off the top of monkey bars, I was all over it. It was like the part of my brain that said, hey Caroline, maybe don't do that if you want to wake up tomorrow alive, just didn't exist. While I didn't seem to mind, my parents most certainly did. They were constantly worried that their once 3-pound, 2 months early preemie suddenly had some sort of death wish before she could even reach kindergarten. Yep, that was me. I think the main thing that kept me hooked to the thrill-seeking life was the fact that there were never any consequences because of it. I mean, my parents never stopped short of handing out my punishments, like handing out candy on Halloween. No, they were very much thriving in that department. What I mean to say is that I never got all that banged up over a failed stunt. Sure, my elbows, knees, shins, and just about every patch of uncovered skin were always decorated with my battle scars, of which I wore with honor. But I never got seriously injured. There was nothing that a boo-boo bunny ice pack, some Bactine, and a Band-Aid couldn't fix, right? Wrong. Very much wrong, Caroline. I was preschool age at the time, so around 4 or 5. We, my mom, twin sister, and me, were getting ready to take a trip to Costco to pick up some groceries. My mom was inside the house, making sure she had all her coupons and whatnot, while my sister and I were fooling around outside in the garage. For about a week now, I've been trying to touch the emergency garage door release, or the red hangy thing, as I like to call it. I don't know why I wanted to touch it. Maybe it was the seemingly impossible nature of the feat, or I was just being a weird kid, probably the latter. But either way, I needed to touch it. So, seeing as though days of measly jumping up to get it had gotten me nowhere, it was then where I decided to take my next step toward success. I was going to climb on top of my mom's minivan to touch it. The gray car, affectionately known as Lady in our household, was already parked in the garage, perfect position for me to climb it. I opened up the side door, and with my sister watching on nearby, I began to climb up the van's roof. I climbed and climbed until I had my feet planted on the armrest of the car seat, my arms grasping onto the roof's rack for dear life, eventually pulling myself atop the roof. Despite the rather large distance between me and the floor, I wasn't even worried about it, as I had only one thing on my mind: touching the red hangy thing. I was sitting on the roof's edge, my tiny legs dangling off into the abyss and arms outstretched to touch it, this close to setting out what I'd attempted to do. So my little underdeveloped brain began to weigh the pros and cons of giving in or giving up. Pro, I would touch it. Con, I could get hurt, but my pride would be much more hurt should I admit defeat in front of my sister. So I made the only reasonable choice that I had. I jumped. Now, I believe that certain moments in life, no matter as unimportant or as minuscule as they may seem, have the power to alter the course of our lives and future. For me, this was one of those moments. As I floated in midair for those few milliseconds, I did end up accomplishing what I had set out to do, as my fingers grazed the red rope. However, my pride was short-lived, as it was then where I discovered what goes up must come down. I hit the cool concrete of the garage floor with a thud and immediately began screaming out in pain. I landed with my right arm folded across my body, thus under the weight of my entire body. My sister ran into the house, yelling for my mom, while I lay inconsolable and paralyzed on the ground. My mom saw right away that my arm was broken and knew she had to take me to the hospital. However, me being the stubborn, savage kid that I still am today, I was having none of this whole, we need to go to the hospital thing. I was still very much set on going to Costco. I mean, Costco remains to this day the holy grail of stores, and I wasn't about to miss out on all those free samples. So, armed with an ice pack and some tissues for the crying, I sat in the grocery cart as my mom wheeled me through the aisles. Plus, the tears got me some extra samples. Once the bags were emptied back at home, I was strapped into my car seat and off to the ER. Sure enough, I'd broken my arm. I was disappointed at first, but I got over it once they told me I'd be able to choose what color I'd want my cast to be. Neon pink, in case you were wondering. In the end, some scars, no matter how internal or external, just seemed to run too deep. My brush with death was a wake-up call for my adrenaline-seeking lifestyle, and I knew it was time to change my ways. Quite philosophical for a preschooler, I know, but I guess I've always been woke in that way, even when I couldn't even tie my own shoes.
Gone were the days of my death-defying shenanigans, and in their place, a life of rule following. Instead of coming up with a new gymnastics routine, my days are now filled with hopscotch and board games. Although it's been many years since, and I've settled in quite comfortably to my life of mediocrity years ago, I can't help but yearn for the good old days. But some things just aren't meant to be, and my life on the wild side just happened to be one of them. Thank you. Next up is Brian Morrell.
Shout out to Miss OD's third period class. So my name is Brian Morrell, and I'm here to talk to you about my minivan. The year is 2010. It's summer. It's bright and hot, like 95 degrees hot enough to melt the ice cream in my cookie ice cream sandwich, bright enough to burn my paper white skin after a mere 5 minutes of exposure. The best part of my afternoon at the pool, besides going off the diving board for the 100th time, is climbing into the cool, refreshing, air-conditioned minivan piloted by my mom. These are some of the happiest days of my life. I'm 10 years old and my childhood is in full swing. There's little worry and regret involved at this point in my life. No college applications, no summer school classes to take. The only things I'm worried about is whether or not my team is going to win the Park District Football Camp Championship, whether or not my friends can come outside that night, and the thousands of mosquito bites populating my meaty calves. I often view our 2007 Honda Odyssey as the most fitting symbol of my childhood. Days always started and ended in it. I spent countless hours riding around Palatine in the back seat. Friendships were formed there, movies were watched, and road trips were taken. This is where my affinity for my minivan began. Flash forward to junior high. Plum Grove was the usual mess of hormones that every junior high is. There, I began to form social habits and branch out from my usual group of neighborhood pals to find new friends. It was there that I incorrectly learned how to judge people. I began to look for appearance and made every assumption based on that one aspect of a person. I did this for a while and ended up spending time with people that weren't really the best friends for me. I'm not saying that these people were bad people, just not the best for me. Our minivan was still very much a part of my life. Every day began in it and every day ended in it. It was not until one comment was made to me that I started to doubt the awesomeness of the vehicle that I had spent so much time in, the vehicle that had given me so much. You still have a minivan? That's kind of sad. This was the comment that sparked the downfall in my appreciation of the car. The person I am today would have said, "Yeah, I do, you pretentious prick." It's the culmination of 100 years of automobile production and the most useful car money can buy. Sadly, the insecure junior high brain in my head worried about this, and soon I didn't want to ride in the minivan at all. I began to opt for the smaller car that we had, even if it meant that my friends had to double buckle in the back seat. My attitude towards our minivan continued like this throughout the beginning of high school, and before I knew it, I had my driving permit. I didn't mind driving it while I was learning because I was scared to crash the other cars we had. Some part of me even thought that I would crash the van and then we would have to get rid of it. However, this never happened because I was too scared to do so. I foolishly imagined that if my parents would let me drive any other car than the minivan. I was wrong. When I got my license, the van was the only car that I was allowed to take. At first, I just decided not to drive. But that didn't last very long because I really had the itch to go places with my friends. The reasoning that I used to convince myself to drive it was that not everyone is blessed enough to have a car to drive, and I was being spoiled. That self-consciousness about the minivan continued, but nevertheless I drove it. It wasn't until a couple of months later that I realized how stupid I was being. I loved my minivan. I could fit anything I wanted in it, I was safe, and it worked well. Looking back on my attitude towards it makes me cringe, but today I'm happy for the lessons that my experiences with it taught me. Thinking about my minivan, I realized some things about my social life. Sure, minivans aren't the most glamorous, and they have the soccer mom stereotype, but they have so many useful qualities, and ours was an important part of my life. Applying this to my view of people, having a minivan throughout my life has taught me to appreciate people for who they are and what they can accomplish, not for what they show on the outside. Thank you. Next up, we have Alexander Yusi.
Hello. Shout out to Mrs. Quinn's third period class. And also, thanks to my family and friends for being here. I love you. I got some poetry to share with you today. So my first poem is called Making Our World Better. The demons that lurk in the dark take a toll on your soul, leaving their mark. When you feel empty inside, you know there's nowhere left to hide. You feel bound and tied to the reality where you reside. It gets to the point where you're tired of everything, causing the deafening silence in your ears to ring. Every day, it gets harder to get out of bed, and taking the first step out only fills you with dread. It's difficult to even smile, just adding on to the ever-growing pile. But you know it takes more than that to knock you down. So you do your best to shake it off and not seem to frown. The world out there is crazy and cruel. So what's the point on creating another duel? You might not see a reason to keep fighting every day, or even see a reason that will want to make you stay. If you can't help yourself, you can always be there for others. And helping someone can even allow your own wounds to cover. See the good, see the bad. Make the choice to make someone glad. Be the hope, be the change. Have the courage to rearrange. You just have to believe in the power within you can achieve. Because if you keep pushing through, you'll probably find someone just like you. Just stand your ground and face your demons. They'll just torture you for any rhyme or reasons, which is probably easier said than done. But there's a battle out there for you to be won. You can make this world a better place. And the first steps towards that is punching your own demons in the face. My next poem is called Facing My Fears. The fear of always being alone eats away at me to the very bone. It keeps me up in the dead of night, not allowing myself to see the light. I feel the world slipping away from me as I reach out, making me do an earth-shaking shout, but everything slips right through my fingers, and the feeling of everything I once held dear still lingers. I'm running out of options and I'm feeling hopeless. All these things weigh down on my heart, turning me to a shell, making me soulless. Let me wipe away all my tears, put my fate into my own hands and shift the gears. Taking a deep breath and trying not to be scared to death. It takes fear to have courage, and it takes courage to know fear. But if I let my fears steer my life, I wouldn't be here. This will not be my final strife. I know I'm afraid to be alone, but when I look back to see how far I've grown, how can I be mad? How can I be sad? I wouldn't be me today if my life was easy anyway. Plus, I know that some people always have my back, which if you would have asked me a few years ago, I would have had lack. Because if they didn't stick by my side, I wouldn't know now where I would reside. I've been given a newfound hope to help me cope, and I know I can make it down the slippery slope. Let me face my fears that I've battled throughout these years. I'll keep fighting until the darkness clears. Let me face my fears, and maybe after all the smears and spears, I'll finally be all right. It might not be simple and clean, but I'll give it all my might. And for my final poem, it's called Always Friends. Let's be friends forever, okay? Well, I guess forever came up a little too short, and all of them left me when I needed the support. Only being left with all the memories of what we once were, of what was once felt so real, cracking me at the seams, leaving me to deal. All my life, I've had dozens of people walk out on me, leaving me to look up to the heavens to plead, feeling too numb to deal with the situation, only to be stuck on some shaky foundation. I know that no matter how hard I try and fight, there's nothing I can do to make it right. I know they're scarred and beaten and bruised. I still don't think their actions should be excused. Seeing them happy without me seems bittersweet, though I know I'd rather see them happy than have my own heart beat. It clenches my chest. I feel like I need to rest, though I know I did my best, and that is what I hold on to. I know that nothing in life is guaranteed, and I think almost all of you would have agreed. I was naive to think this would have lasted very long. I guess that's where I went wrong. I'll hold on to all the times we spent together. All those memories filled with joy will be my tether. Hopefully we'll meet again. My love for you all will never end. Want to be friends forever? Next up is Dana Poole.
"2018 was a wild year for me. I lost a friend to drama, one of my best friends moved schools, I became co-captain of a team, and found myself in a relationship. While these definitely aren't the most unique occurrences, to me they made a great impact as they taught me about love. I thought I had a grip on how to comprehend affection, but last year I learned a lot about my perspective. All of us probably know that love comes in many different forms. It can be between family, friends, teammates, anyone. It's not always perfect, neat, clean, or easy. The events of 2018 led me to discover the lessons embedded in the complex idea of love. The first lesson was strength. I won't sugarcoat it. The drama that happened between my friend and I took us on a roller coaster of emotions. Every small grievance turned into a fight. There was miscommunication, a difference of feelings, and we stopped being on the same page. We went back and forth between being okay to being passive-aggressive to being just overall aggressive. It was a mess and it didn't feel right. In the end, I did cut ties because I thought it was best. At the time, doing so broke my heart. She was as close to me as my sister. Leaving her was like leaving a second half of me, but I loved her too much to watch the toxic relationship between us tear us apart in an unhealthy way. I don't know how she feels about it as of this day, but I see her now and she looks so much happier. Reflecting on the outcome of our fighting has led me to believe that had we not distanced ourselves, we would have both missed out on so many beautiful opportunities. The bond between us provided the strength we needed to go our separate ways. Following that wonderful series of events, my other best friend left friend, and I learned to believe in fate. When we were together, we were inseparable. Inside jokes poured out of us with every exhale, and you could look at us at any moment and we'd be smiling. Less than 365 days together, and I'm practically spending all of my free time at her house. Then, she got into a new school, and I couldn't have been happier for her. But the first day of sophomore year was rough. Every time I thought of something funny or the PA system played Perfect by Ed Sheeran, I wanted to turn to her and freak out. But she wasn't there. I still miss her. Luckily though, this situation has a much happier end. We're still close and we talk all the time. Our relationship was instantaneous, and it's my honest belief that we were meant to cross paths. The trend of change continued as summer came and went. I became co-captain of the color guard team here at Fremd. Leading a group of 9 girls may not seem like much, but it freaked me out. Suddenly, I was in charge of keeping everyone together. I had to recognize that I was always being watched, and I needed to step up my leadership skills. Being a sophomore, I thought the team would think of me as someone they could disregard. I was proved wrong, though. Through our fall and winter seasons, I've grown incredibly close to the girls I call my teammates and my friends. Day-long competitions, our tea spilling, and our joke making has connected us all. While we are a small group, they've taught me that everyone's heart has the room to love more people than they know. Appreciation and acceptance are limitless if they're allowed to grow. Finally, there's my boyfriend. He's taught me that it's important to be confident and accepting of myself. He encourages me to be proud by making silly dances with me, supporting the activities I'm involved in, and sharing parts of his life. The open communication between him and I only furthers our commitment to one another. When I'm with him, I feel unstoppable because he believes in me, which means I must be doing something right. The amount of affection between us still amazes me, and it builds me up every time I feel down. I've learned to love the person I am. Looking back, the events of 2018 gave me a gift, experience. The experiences that led me to share my year. To those of you in this story, whether you're here or not, I thank you for everything you've given me. I wouldn't be here on this stage without the memories we've made as our paths intertwine and connected. I encourage everyone to take a moment to look back and see the small impacts that snowballed along the way. You might be surprised by the path you see.
Such is Grace Wilkie.
Hi guys, I'm Grace and I'm in Miss OD's AP Lit class. This is a letter that I wrote to my past self. Dear Grace, wish, a verb, to feel or express a strong desire or hope for something that is not easily attainable, to want something that cannot or probably will not happen. Grace, I know you do this quite often. Since a young age, you've wished upon stars, 1111s, four-leaf clovers, eyelashes, and ladybugs. When you were a kid, every May 9th, you'd blow out your candles and wish for the same thing, that everything would remain exactly as it was. That mom would never stop singing the same pajama time song every night. That dad would never stop spontaneously taking you and Michael out for ice cream at 1 a.m. That you'd never stop pushing grandma and grandpa past the koi fish pond at the nursing home. And each and every year, your wish came true. You woke up every morning falling in love with your extraordinary life. Grace, I know that at this point, life seems to be running dry. Mom's vibrant tune about bedtime that once filled the walls of your house slowly faded into arguments about grades and unmeetable expectations. Late night ice cream trips have ceased now that Dad's work schedule has piled up alongside his aggravation and bipolar personality. Pushing Grandma and Grandpa around the nursing home isn't even a possibility because they aren't at the nursing home anymore. They left and you couldn't say goodbye. Grace, trust me, the rumors that flooded Frem's halls are permanently engraved into my memory. How you're the one that made him suicidal. That you're supposedly the one that flung him into a pit of despair, only caring about yourself and your own well-being. I remember your daily routine. Wake up, go to school, avoid looking at your overweight body in the mirror, hold your breath for 7 hours and 15 minutes of hell, and go home all while pretending everything is fine, when in fact, it was the exact opposite. Each and every drop of self-confidence you once had was wiped dry by a rag of anxiety, and you simply had no choice but to let it rule your every decision. Grace, I remember your first panic attack. I won't ever forget that night after practice, staying up until near daylight doing homework with a pit in your stomach. Getting into bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like someone's hands were gripped around your neck. Screaming, but no noise coming out. You thought you were dying. Waking up the next morning, you hoped and prayed it was all a bad dream, but the nightmare manifested itself into daily life. School was hard as it was, but this anxiety made it impossible. Teachers definitely noticed you crying in the back of their class, but you learned to play it off like allergies. Dancing, your escape, turned into your worst fear. Your friend group broke apart, and people you thought would be standing up at your wedding transformed into complete strangers. You loathed your body and everything about your appearance, and would have cut off any amount of excess fat on your legs to have the toned body of your female peers. Your personality constantly annoyed you, and you figured it better to keep your mouth shut in class rather than speaking your mind like you once did so confidently. Even home started to feel like a war zone, filled with screaming matches and disappointment. These nightmares took place seemingly every other day and would haunt you anytime, any place, anywhere they wanted to, and all you could do was take it. Grace, I remember the first time you thought about taking your own life. Sitting at the kitchen table, doing A-push homework, you thought, this is why people kill themselves. Your eyes darted to the medicine cabinet as several what-if situations flooded your mind. But while every single suicide prevention lecture you half-heartedly sat through junior high told you to call someone immediately, you just sat there. You didn't want to scare mom or dad. You didn't want to threaten Michael's innocence. You didn't want sympathetic looks when you entered family parties. You just didn't. So you sat there, letting the voice in your head tear you apart, piece by piece, until you were simply a shell of the person you once were. Grace, I wrote this letter because I know you need it. I'm not going to lie to you. As a senior, your friends will watch you still have panic attacks in the hallways at Fremd, and sometimes that deafening voice still comes back to haunt you. However, notice the use of past tense in the previous paragraphs. While I'm aware you'll never receive this, I would give anything to tell you that your wishing well of a life has transformed into a reality you've always dreamt of. That even though mom doesn't sing the pajama time song anymore, you spend that time teaching her the proper use of Instagram and what a snap is. And while you and dad aren't at Wendy's getting Frosties past midnight, you make up for it by watching late night game shows on school nights when you definitely should be asleep. Grandma and Grandpa have become your two guardian angels and biggest supporters. You've come to find a group of friends that truly are your family, who will stay up until the most ungodly hours of the night sending you random memes and surprising you with spunky dunkers at your door, no matter the wind chill. You hold each and every one of your obnoxiously extroverted Irish family members close to your heart, as if you had a choice. There's like 100 of them. Grace, you now look at yourself in the mirror without wanting to vomit. You're finally comfortable in your own skin and look back at the progress you've made with pride. You're finally able to admit it, but even more, you're grown enough to learn from it. The black and white photograph you once lived in has been submerged in color. The war is over. Reality, a noun. The world or state of the things as they actually exist, as opposed to an idealistic or notional idea of them. Grace, at this point, reality is the last thing you want to face. Nonetheless, I'm here to tell you that nothing in this world is worth carrying out the terrible plan you have kept secret for so long. The millions of wishes you currently hold in silence eventually blossom into your life. And this life, it's sure as hell worth living to the fullest. Never forget this. All my love, Grace.
All right, let's give this courageous, funny, talented, creative group another round of applause. And we probably have time for just one or two questions, so make them good if you have a question for someone on the stage. Anyone?